This is breaking news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.
Good morning, I'm Renee Summerow, where we're getting ready to take you live to the NV Energy, where a local official is set to speak on the federal infrastructure bill that allocates billions of dollars to support Nevada's infrastructure. Let's take a listen.
With regard to our efforts to plan and fund projects, improving our transportation network. So the RTC, along with our regional partners, will collaborate to identify and compete for more than $100 million in grant funding to advance projects that align to our local, state, and federal goals. One such initiative that will benefit greatly from this monumental investment is the RTC's transition to a 100 zero-emissions fleet. Through increased funding from the Department of Transportation and the Federal Transit Administration, as well as grant programs like the Low, No, or Emission Vehicle Program, the infrastructure bill will provide opportunities for critical funding to acquire new vehicles and construct charging and refueling infrastructure at our maintenance facilities, home to RTC's 800-plus buses, vehicles that operate around the clock to keep Las Vegas moving. In March, we published our zero-emissions bus rollout plan, which outlines the steps necessary to convert 100% of our fleet to zero-emission vehicles by 2035 if funding is available. The process is already underway, and thanks to nearly $4 million grant the RTC received in June of 2020, we're going to acquire 2 hydrogen fuel cell electric buses, which should be on the road sometime in 2022. We're also in the process of procuring 4 battery electric buses with the option to purchase more than 100 additional battery electric buses. We're excited to work with NV Energy, and thank you very much. Your team's been awesome to work with, to fully implement our zero emissions plan as we incorporate these new and innovative technologies. The move to a zero emissions fleet will yield numerous benefits for Southern Nevada, including emissions reductions, improved air quality, and decreased noise pollution. This is especially true for disadvantaged communities that are disproportionately exposed to harmful pollutants. Excuse me. So during the fleet conversion period, the RTC will prioritize deployment of zero-emission vehicles in those communities in line with the agency's mission of promoting sustainable, accessible, and equitable transportation options. So again, we are so appreciative of our federal delegation and President Biden for delivering the largest investment in infrastructure in the last half-century. I would especially like to thank Congressman Susie Lee for her work as a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, who played a key role in the development and passage of this historic legislation. Now, please join me in welcoming Congressman Susie Lee.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, MJ. It's really an honor to be here with MJ of the RTC and Doug Cannon of NV Energy. I can't think of two other organizations that aim to benefit and really take advantage of this historic investment in the passage of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. I was honored to witness President Biden sign this historic legislation into law, honored to be a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, which was instrumental in getting the framework composed and to the Senate for passage. And I'm pleased to be with you today to share just what this means for the state of Nevada. Nevada's infrastructure, as we all know, has suffered from a systemic lack of investment for decades. This lack has kept our state from growing our clean energy economy and providing more sustainable transportation for our communities. But with this law, Nevada is set to receive $4 billion in funding that we can use to make life better for our residents, create a generation of good-paying union jobs, and continue to solidify Nevada as a leader when it comes to a clean energy economy. In Nevada, there are 20 bridges and almost 1,100 miles of highway in need of repair. And what this means for everyday Nevadans is literally hundreds of dollars in repairs for commuters each year. We're also expected to receive $2.7 billion to improve our highway and bridges and improve our residents' commutes as they travel from work and school. This law will also improve Nevada's transportation options and make them more sustainable and resilient. Nevadans who take public transportation spend an extra extra 133% of their time commuting, and 5.1% of our transit vehicles are out of date and past their useful life. And to fix this problem, Nevada will receive $468 million to revamp our public transportation system so our residents can travel more safely and efficiently. And of course, a big reason that we're here today is to discuss the electrification policies included in the infrastructure package. Nevada has an opportunity to transition into a clean energy economy, especially when it comes to making electric vehicles more accessible. This law will provide $38 million in funding to Nevada for a network of EV chargers to facilitate long-distance travel, not just in Nevada, but across the western U.S. And for our tourism economy, we all know how important that is. And it's no secret that Nevada is ground zero as we stand here sweating on November 29th for the effects of climate change. So the time to focus on expanding clean energy is long past due. This legislation also includes $5 billion nationally to help us build out a more resilient electrical grid. And with this package, we are investing $550 million in the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program, known as EECBG, and $500 million in the State Energy Program to provide grants for communities, cities, states, and tribal territories to develop a clean energy programs and projects that, again, create jobs. And more importantly, this law includes $3.5 billion for the Weatherization Assistance Program. Now, this is a program that's not incredibly well known, but it has such an amazing impact on people's utility bills and them efficiently heating and cooling their houses, reducing energy costs for low-income households by hundreds of dollars each year. And this is so critical in a state like Nevada, where we see extreme heat for much of the year. But of course, what is most important to reducing our emissions altogether, it's important for us to do that all together, but more importantly, transition to clean energy. And we know that our state has been a true leader and standout when it comes to clean energy creation. In 2019, in fact, Nevada passed a bill that requires the state to generate 50% of its electricity from renewable resources by 2030 and aim for 100% carbon-free resources by 2050. And I have to give a shout out to NV Energy for being a leader in making us make great progress towards that goal. And this bill will also help Nevada achieve that goal by making investments in our grid, EV charging, roadways, and public transport, all while providing good-paying union jobs for Nevada workers. And a huge part of this will be adopting electric vehicles to address the climate crisis and support domestic manufacturing jobs. And I know that both MJ and Doug agree with me that they are already very hard at work planning on just exactly how they are going to take advantage of this incredible piece of legislation. And with that, I'd like to turn the podium back over to MJ Maynard, CEO, to speak. Oh, I guess, no, I'm introducing Doug. Sorry about that. I would now like to turn it over to Doug Cannon, CEO of NV Energy. And like I said, NV Energy has been a leader, not just in the state, but across this country, showing states and showing utility companies just how they can be aggressive in making that transition to clean energy. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Doug.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Lee, and thank MJ for your remarks. It's an honor to be here this morning to visit about a topic that I'm really passionate about, and I know we're passionate about this topic here at NV Energy. As we sit here today, as the representative, the Congresswoman, pointed out, we've all experienced the effects of climate change. They're real. And so as a state here in Nevada, we have adopted policies to help us start to address and try to curb further advancement of climate change in our state. And we mentioned having 50% of our energy come from renewable resources by 2030. We're well on our way to achieving that objective. And we have a goal as a state and a state policy of trying to be at 100% renewable energy by 2050. That's a big goal. That's a huge shift in how we've historically supplied our energy. But it's a goal that we as a state, as we come together with different stakeholder groups, can certainly achieve. If we look at the two main drivers of climate change in our state right now, or carbon emissions, they come from two primary sources. Today, the number one source is actually vehicles, transportation. The number two source is energy supply. Now, we've pulled the energy supply contribution to carbon down significantly over the years by retiring our coal generation fleet, by installing more renewables, and we will continue to take those actions. But the leadership that Congresswoman Lee has shown, and the rest of our Nevada delegation, in passing the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, is another important step in advancing those climate change objectives and curbing the effects of climate change here in Nevada. As we start with electric vehicles, for example, Nevada's long been a leader in electric vehicles. We had the Nevada Electric Highway that was installed a number of years ago. This past legislative session here at the state level, SB 448 was passed under the leadership of Governor Sisolak as well as Senator Chris Brooks. And that plan is actually being approved this week, hopefully, by our Public Utilities Commission. And that will include the investment of over $100 million in new charging infrastructure in the state of Nevada. That includes all of the backbone infrastructure, as well as nearly 2,000 chargers, high-speed, modern, smart chargers that can help people start to have confidence that they can drive their electric vehicle without running out of a charge somewhere and being stuck or abandoned. That concern is real for people, and it holds some people back. Now the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that's been passed, and the leadership of our federal delegation is going to take that, and we're going to be able to go even further. Additional charging infrastructure is going to be installed throughout our state. And what's important is it's going to be available to every single Nevadan. If you look at the $100 million plan I talked to you about, nearly 40% of that money is going to go to underserved, underrepresented communities to make sure every Nevadan gets the chance, that it's not just Nevadans that live in certain zip codes. And ultimately, if we're going to make the change to curb the effects of climate change, it does have to apply to every single Nevadan, and they all have to have that opportunity. I appreciate Congresswoman Lee touching on the importance of jobs. That is so critical here. We've partnered with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, or the IBEW, in our Stronger Together initiative. Under this initiative, we are out in underrepresented communities, in communities that have high minority populations, and we're recruiting Nevadans to come to work and take on these high-paying, high-skilled jobs. The union has set up, our union partners have set up training programs both in southern Nevada as well as northern Nevada to train folks on how to work with this charging infrastructure, how to install it, how to maintain it, how to ensure we have the best fleet of charging infrastructure anywhere in the country. And we're excited to be a part of that partnership with the IBEW and our other represented labor partners throughout the state to ensure that we really are creating those high-paying jobs that can support Nevada families. And so, again, we're excited about the future. The future with the resources that have been provided here is bright. And we are going to be able to curb the effects of climate change as we work together as a group of stakeholders and as we work together as Nevadans to really ensure that we have set up infrastructure that will benefit future generations to come. And with that, again, I appreciate the Congresswoman, I appreciate MJ, and the opportunity to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, thank you, Doug and MJ, and just happy to be here to talk about just what the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act means, not just to our communities, to our state, but to future workers for generations to come. So thank you all for joining us. And we'll take questions if anyone has questions. we can do individual. Yeah, we can do individual interviews. Yep. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Good. How are you?
We just heard from local officials on how they feel about the federal infrastructure bill and how it will impact the state. We will have more for you on this story online at lvrj.com, and we will have an update on all of today's events for you this evening on 7 at 7 p.m. Remember, you can also download our free RJ mobile app to get news alerts sent straight to your phone, and you can find us on Roku, Apple TV, YouTube, and your favorite digital platforms. I'm Renee Summerhour. Thank you for watching.
You've been watching breaking news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.